Hello and welcome to Access to HE. We're looking at the nature and context of business unit, and this is week 2 when we're going to look at internal and external factors and the influence they have on your business. Okay, the objectives that we're addressing here in this session are 2.1, which is assess 2 of the tools which can be used for analysing the internal and external business environment. So today I'm going to look at 2 of the most well-known used tools, but I'm going to ask you to do some research on a couple of others as well, which will give you a bit of choice to look at. 2.2 is to conduct an internal and external analysis of a business. 2.3 is to explain how the data from analysis can be used to inform business strategy. So when you're looking at using these tools, you need to think what you can do with the data that you gather and how you can use it to inform your strategy. Is it going to be part of your ongoing business planning? Is it about creating a change? Is it about making a project? So we're going to have a look at that. Okay, first of all, why use tools? Well, they're pretty crucial because it allows you to identify what the opportunities and threats are within your market, particularly. It also helps you to sort of get your head organized and to cover all the issues you need. If you use the tools, use the templates, use the layout, lots of people will get experienced at doing this and they'll be able to sort of work on it. It can also help you with your strategic decision making by understand how sometimes, we spent so long working in our organizations, we actually forget to find out what sort of threat stuff that goes on outside actually has on our business. And, if it's a big political change or big economic change that's happening on not just in your country, but even in the world, it can have knock-on effects to you. If it means that some of your suppliers can't get the stuff that you want, depending on what sort of work you're doing, if you can't get the microchip you need from Korea because there's a problem with China, all this will have an effect on your business. So it's important to be thinking outside the box, not just inside. So the first one we're going to talk about is a SWOT analysis. And you might have heard of this before. A lot of people have often done it in other college courses. So it's not really that unusual. SWOT analysis it's an acronym, stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. It's been used a lot and it is used a lot in all sorts of different businesses because it's very flexible. You don't have to be a specific business to use the SWOT. It's generally credited to Stanford University in the US in about 1960s, really. They sort of developed it and it's been used ever since, and it is still very actively used. So it helps you organize the data that you're gathering into 4 specific areas. And hopefully out of that, the project group can actually make a plan about what to do. It's a great brainstorming technique as well, using the SWOT. Instead of having completely free flowing ideas, if you work around sort of at least just a heading, then it gives people a bit of a focus. So let's first of all think about strengths. So strengths are the things about your business or maybe your team, if you're doing a team analysis, that gives you advantage over maybe other people in your industry. They've got to be positive, they've got to be real, but they can be a bit intangible. It could be about attitudes, it could be about the way you work together so cohesively that it gives you a strength. But they're generally internal, so it's something that's between you and the team or just between you and the whole business. You could be a small business, you could be a large business. It could be just something that happens in your, it could be a strength in your department. It really depends on what you're looking at. So when you do your SWOT analysis, as I said, you can do it for the whole company, and senior management will do them a lot. But you can also do it for your own department or even just your own team within a department. Strengths are things that are beneficial. What's good about the organisation? What do people think about you really? Are you good at managing finances? Do you create a high quality product? Do you have lots of goodwill from your customer because of the quality of your service? Do you have a lot of brand loyalty? Are you Coca-Cola? Are you BMW? You know, those sorts of things. Okay, so that's strengths. Weaknesses is pretty much the converse, really. So, first of all, I'm asking you what is good about your team or your department. Now, where are your weaknesses? And it's not necessarily a criticism. There may be just some areas that your team does better than others. But conversely, there may be some areas that maybe you need to improve on, or you need more skills in that area. So, what is it that places you or the company or the department at a disadvantage relative to others who do the same sort of thing? Okay. You can't really compare yourself. Well, you can, but it's difficult. If you're a small sort of one-off company with 3 employees, it's quite hard to compare yourself overall to someone like Coca-Cola, for instance, because if you're a little drinks company and Coca-Cola, you can't really go up against them. But you can certainly highlight the fact that you are small compared to some other big players. So weaknesses, what else detract the organization from getting to where you want to go? So again, is there some skills missing? Are there areas where we don't meet the standards we know we want to? Are there areas where maybe you've had some external inspections from finance groups or from government employees, and you haven't really come up with the goods, and you need to improve. So you need to deal with that really. You can't just sit around saying, okay, well, we're really good here, but we're a bit weak here, and just plod along like that. So now we were looking really at stuff that's internal to you and the organization. Now we're looking at stuff that's sort of external to you and the organization. So we're looking at opportunities. So what opportunities are there out there for you to do something better, something new, develop a new product, go in a slightly different direction? So what are the chances to make greater profits in the environment? What attractive factors are out there that you think, I can develop in that direction? Could be a political change that you've identified and think, hang on, that's going to enable us to do work in this country as well as this country. So something like that. So when an organisation can really benefit the environment and then put a new strategy in place. So you need to be sort of very aware of a changing environment around you, particularly within the market. Now, your market is really your competition. So imagine if one of your biggest competitors goes out of business for some reason, financial mismanagement, something, things happen. That there could be an opportunity for your organization to pick up some extra work, or if you think, well, if I do some quick skills development, can I expand into that area? So it could be new technology that is an opportunity for you to do something better than you did before, or it could be a loss of a competitor, which might enable you to pick up a different direction or growth. And of course, the opposite to opportunities out there is always the threats that are out there as well. So something in your external environment that could cause trouble for your business, your team, your department. It can often be beyond under control of your organization. So not necessarily to your fault, but that's not, that's life, that's business, really. But it could place your whole operation at risk. Again, big political changes, when a different political party comes in, they may have a very different approach, which might, and they may bring in legislation that might make it really difficult for you to operate, or much more expensive for you to operate, because they've brought in some tax changes that think, oh God, we can't do that. Or say, like when the UK left the EU with Brexit, but some small providers found it really, really difficult because the amount of extra tariffs they were having to pay. And when, maybe it's a small food company that had a lot of business, say, in France, just across the water to us. And there was a lot of to-in and fro-in. Or another company that maybe used to import a lot of French wine, say, or cheese, because they were a restaurant, and the Brexit changes actually put some small companies out of business, or it made it really, really difficult to operate, and they had to change what they did. So if they were a restaurant that got all their food from France, the tariffs and the paperwork and that made it so difficult for them. So some of them went down to it, and some of them just managed to scrabble about and get, food locally, or just change the whole style of what they did. So think about where you might be vulnerable to threats from outside. As I said, they can, you can't always have control over them, but you've got to think about, what skills do you have that can help you survive these threats, really? And I've got some examples there. Entry of foreign competitors, so maybe someone coming from outside that didn't exist before, who do exactly what you do, or maybe even do it better, or they're a bit larger. A rival firm that's decided to move into your area, doing your sort of thing, or actually, a restaurant that's set up next door, selling the same sort of food, that sort of thing. A product that you create that's really, going out of fashion now, and nobody really wants it as much. Imagine if you're a bookshop, they are reducing, because people read so much electronic books, so that people are still reading books, but they're not reading them in the same way. We used to have video shops on every corner, where people would go and rent a video to watch for the night. You might think that's quite funny now, but it was a huge business. Some of, like, blockbusters were a huge business in this country, but they're all dead now, really, because people, first of all, people started buying their own because they became so cheap, but also now everyone streams. So there's even, even the buying and selling of DVDs really is sort of gone. So things change, fashions change, technology changes. So changes outside can be a threat to your business. So when do you need to do a SWOT analysis? When you want to launch a new product, good idea. Make sure that you've seen, you should do a SWOT before you actually make the product, while you're thinking about it. When you're looking at evaluating competition from outside, or maybe there's some new competitors in the market, do a SWOT analysis. When you're doing the strategic planning for the overall organization, and this is usually your senior management team, they will be doing them all the time in all different directions. When you're looking at your goods and services, especially things that maybe aren't selling as well as they used to, a SWOT analysis can help you as part of your planning process what to do. When you want to know how effective you are in the market, maybe you haven't looked for a while, are you still competitive? Is someone doing better than you? When you're doing some sort of local decision making, say just with your team, do we want to develop new skills in a different area? Do we want to change some of our goals that we've had for a few years? And, when you're doing personal development planning as a manager with some of the staff you supervise, you can still do a SWOT analysis. You could do it as a group, as a team, but it will give you goals for everyone's personal development as well. As I said, when you evaluate a product, is it coming to the end of its life? Is it no good? Or has it been an okay launch? You're launching a new product. Has it done well? If not, why not SWOT it? And if you just, people use SWOT now for everything really. So if you're having a team meeting and maybe you want to change a policy or a procedure, you will have some brainstorming meetings, and the SWOT tool can be quite useful to give you a bit of a framework for it. So very well used, very handy. How do you do it really? Well, it's not that difficult. First of all, you decide who's going to be in the team, who's going to be in the group. It could be your normal team, or if you're making a change for a department, you might set a project group together. Then you allocate, someone has a project lead and they allocate the information gathering. Because some of it, there's a lot of work to do. You might want to be doing some financials as well. So you'll be allocating different people and give them a deadline to come back and then bring it all back. You tend to have a workshop environment, sort of a group together. It might be a team day out or a morning out if you're doing something quite big. You might want to get away from what you're doing, really. But it needs to be fairly relaxed and conducive to sort of lots of ideas and brainstorming. Because what you do is you lay out the information, lay it out on a SWOT, and then get people to throw in things that might not have been thought of. And then out of that, you put together a plan. So you list your strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities, and then you evaluate them. Which ones are important? Which ones are urgent? Is this something we want to do? Can we get away without doing it? Is it something we have to do now, or are we going to be in trouble? And then you carry your findings forward and you use the information from your analysis, as I said, into your planning. It could be personal planning for an individual, and that will be looked at in appraisals and supervision, or it could be planning for the year for the department or the team. It could be in your annual plan. Um, and of course, that's got to work in line with the company's overall goals. There's no point you coming out with a plan that's wild and wacky and creating something that the company doesn't really want. So they will be part of your SWOT analysis too. What is senior management's vision and goals? They've got to be in it too as maybe an opportunity, or it can be a threat if you've got a great idea. So out of that, you create an action plan, as I said, and you really need at least these 4 points in your action plan. What I've done with people, when we usually do it on a sort of whiteboard, once we've done our SWOT, we go around and we mark each point of the SWOT with what's got to be addressed immediately, what can be just handled now. Is it just something that we can just do? We don't have to make any changes. Is there anything that we could do that we sort of think we can do, but we probably need to do a bit more research on it? Or are there some things that, yeah, it's okay now, but come in the future, or if this legislation comes in 2 years' time, we need to sort it out so we can put that on a bit of a long-term plan. Okay, so you've got 4 different levels really. The must be addressed immediately are obviously your highest priorities. Things that can be planned for the future is your lowest, and the other two sort of in the middle. So, what are the benefits of doing a SWOT analysis? It really does help set objectives. I've used them for many, many years and they are very helpful. It gives you a framework so you can look at things in the 4 different chunks. It helps your brain sort things out as well. It gives you an impetus to do your analysis, because coming out of the SWOT, you can actually decide, what should be done, what could be done, and you work through it that way. What will stop you doing this, and this as well. It's also a good way of assessing people's capabilities and competencies. So if you've created that, you can actually, as I said, look at it with someone in one-to-one supervision and appraisal. and that will work for someone because you'll be able to set goals and to set, whether someone can actually perform that role. Do they have the skills? Do they have the training? Do they have the inclination as well? It gives you evidence for making a change, or a change in your organization's culture, or changing your organization's direction. Like I said, if you were Blockbuster Video, where were you going to go when everyone started streaming and buying DVDs? So, what were they thinking of there? I don't know what happened to them. As far as I know, they just all fizzled out. But could they have done something with it? I think they actually got swallowed up by Amazon, actually. But there you go. So that might have been fine. They might have just sold themselves to Amazon and retired with the money. Good for them. Um, and then the other benefit is what is it does stimulate people to talk about it. It gives them a way of focusing their conversation so it doesn't go too sort of wild and anywhere as well, because you're focusing on, when we're saying to the team, now come on, let's look at what the opportunities are. That's what you're focusing on. So people don't come in. Otherwise, the brainstorming can get too random and you can't pull it together. Everything's got pitfalls. I personally don't think SWOT has that many considering the benefits, but yes, there are some pitfalls. One of the pitfalls are it can be very subjective. And, if you got three people in a room to do a SWOT without discussing it, they'd all look a bit different. So, you might have to use it as a guide because you're getting different views. But I think that can be overcome by having a good mix of people in the group and having a consensus. So when you've thrown a load of ideas out, one of the things I've done with SWOT analysis, you've gone with the team and said, okay, what's the consensus? Does everything here under opportunities, does it all really work, or do we see, and sometimes we even took a vote on what ones were definite opportunities, so you can narrow it down. It can cause organisations to view circumstances as very simple. It could do, I suppose, but I think, it depends. If you've got the knowledge to think wider, then maybe not. Categorizing aspects to strengths and needs may be very subjective, as there is a great deal of uncertainty. Yes, there is uncertainty in the market. You've got to do the best you can, though. You can't just say, I'm not planning ahead, I'm not making any changes because I don't know if the market's going to be any good. You've got to go with what you do know. To be effective, it needs to be done regularly. Yes, that is true. Doing it and never revisiting it is a bit pointless, really. Um, and sometimes it says here that the pace of change may make it difficult to anticipate. Well, yes, that's true. Sometimes you don't always do it in time, but it still means even as soon as you hear about a change and you think about it, you could say, well, have we got time to do this? Let's have a quick look. Data used may be based on assumptions that could be unfounded. Well, bad data is bad data, The important thing is to make sure that all the data you do use is as good as it can be, really. And this would be the same for any piece of research or business planning. If you work on bad data, then, it's never going to be any good. It lacks detailed structure, maybe, but on the other hand, some people prefer it because they create their own structure within it. Here's a SWOT analysis template. Most people tend to use it this way. It's nice and easy. You can draw it up on a whiteboard quite simply. Just notice that strengths and weaknesses are internal, opportunities and threats are external, weaknesses and threats are negative, strengths and opportunities are positive. So you can just keep that in mind. It helps you when you're thinking, really. Okay, so that was SWOT, and as I said, they're very, very well used, and it's something that if you work in any business, you really need to practice and learn the skill of. PESTLE is very similar to SWOT. It tends to look about the environment a bit more rather than you as a team. It's another diagnostic tool. As you can see, there are a few more levels. In this one, I've got SWOT inside it, because you can see that they tend to join in. So, like where you've got strengths, legal and environment can be overlap. Opportunities, environment, and technological can overlap. Weaknesses could be political and economic. Threats can be economic and social. But be aware that they tend to be external to your organization. Okay. So let's have a look at them a bit more closely. Here's a PESTLE template: political, economic, social, technological, legal, and environmental. And you basically just fill things into the boxes. Very similar to your SWOT. Done in the same way with a group brainstorming. As I said, it could be a team or it could be a project group or a senior management group. So, what is political? When you're looking at political factors, you need to take into account what's happening in your country. What changes in government policies? Is there any political instability or any, wildly different political approaches after an election, maybe? Other factors that go under political include changes in tax, industry regulations, and global trade agreements and restrictions. As I said, for the UK, the Brexit changes were massive political changes that were on everybody's SWOTs and vessels. I can assure you, for a few years, probably still are, in fact. Economic. What economic factors would you be considering? Remember, they're external to your organisation. There'd be things like exchange rate. It could be interest rates. It could be if there's a general economic growth in the country or a general decline in the country, rising prices, general inflation, globalization. Globalization is when a lot of stuff is being made elsewhere in the world and not just necessarily in your own country. And so a lot of stuff's being imported and exported backwards and forwards. That can have an economic problem as things change in different countries, and it's way out of your control. Labor costs, or the insurance costs, the general cost of living. If it's more expensive for people to buy food, they might cut down on using one of your services, say you're a restaurant or something like that. So that's consumer spending as well. If you're a clothes shop and people have less money to spend, then they will buy things, but they may not buy them as much as they used to. Keep that in mind. Social aspects, that's lifestyle factors. What's changing? Gave you the example of videos, and that's sort of technology and social. People were saying, oh, I don't have to walk down the shop anymore to get these. I can just sit at home and stream them from my own TV because I've got the technology, got my smart TV. So that was the change. That's the next one. But it's also, oh, let's everyone come round and I'll put Netflix on, things like that. So there are some social changes in there. That's affected people going out to restaurants as well. People now have access to like very recent movies at home. They don't go to the cinema. They don't pay to do that. They actually just stay at home. So save them money, but not too good for the old cinemas and the restaurant. Cultural norms, any change in culture and expectations, any change in social attitudes, work-life balance as well. If people are working shorter hours and they've got more free time, then they've got more interest in, going out, buying products, doing stuff that isn't work related. So population demographics, do you live in a very isolated area? If so, do you is it a good idea to open a shoe shop when you live in a tiny village and there's only 3 people and some sheep, Or would it be better to open a small supermarket, really? Things like that. Technology grows and grows all the time, and any one of us who's got a smartphone knows that. And knows the amount of things that we can do on that phone that we probably used to have to go to some shops for. So, so how does your business respond to all the technological innovations? Have you got, is your project a technology product in itself? And if so, is it keeping up with the trends? Is it keeping up with the stuff that's coming out of Korea now? Or is it one of the things that's coming out of Korea and then leading the way? So, technological advancements will affect data storage. Everyone needs more ability to store data now for just for everything that we do, really. Social networking, they take up so much of people's time, they actually don't get around to do the cooking and the cleaning sometimes. So how does that affect people? Robotics and the introduction of AI is definitely worth thinking about. Will it put people out of jobs? It's the age-old question. Will it affect your your work? Can AI do what some of your staff do? You really need to think about these questions. Legal, any shifts in the legal landscape, any changes in employment law and in employment decisions, you need to be reflecting on them. So you need to keep up to date with all changes in legislation, things like health and safety regulations. I've worked in care for many years, and the amount of changes in health and safety regulations that actually affected people's jobs is quite dramatic. When I went into nursing originally, we were lifting people manually, doing things like that. They brought in health and safety regulations that was to protect people's sort of backs and knees and legs, which it did. But it meant certain, things had to be bought. But you didn't need, two people to lift someone. You could do it on your own because you had hoists and equipment to do that. So it mean that you had to look at making sure that you had the money to buy the most up to date equipment, otherwise you were criticized, really. And thinking that you didn't always need two people in the same area because of that lifting had gone. So there was a lot of decisions to make. Environmental. Environment is a big issue nowadays. We all know about climate change. Corporate social responsibility is quite a big issue. If people want government funding, they often have to identify that they're not damaging the environment that much, or they're taking steps not to damage it, and they have some corporate social responsibility. There's a lot of people looking more towards ethical sourcing of goods and services, which could affect your business. It could be people might not want to buy it for you because you're not very ethical, because you don't pay any good wages, don't give people any breaks. Or on the other hand, if you're an exemplary employer, then you might find that people are more inclined to buy from you if you advertise it well, really. And we've certainly seen that with some of the very big organisations. Some of them tell the truth, some of them don't. But also we've seen about sort of big organisations that are actually still buying from sort of very unethical places, where people are not really being paid properly and working in very poor conditions. It's much more of an issue now, and a lot of people are voting with their feet when they find out about that. There are a lot of people, especially in the Western world, who have quite high morals about the environmental issues now. And they will choose one product over another. There are people who don't mind and who will carry on, but you need to be aware that if people are shaming you because of your use of animals, or testing on animals, things like that, it does matter nowadays. So how do you do it? Well, it's pretty much the same as doing a SWOT, really. You identify the scope of the research. Is it a little team one where you're only looking at certain things? Is it an all organization one that senior management team is looking at, real wide aspects, looking at the whole business? So how big is the research going to be? Who are you going to allocate it to? You need to think about the present, and you need to think as much about the future as possible, because the whole point about it is the sort of threats from external. So if someone says, if the there may not be a legislation change now, but if it's being planned in 5 years, you need to include it. So if you know about it, you need to include it. Now, obviously, you don't always know about things and you can't include it, but it's a responsibility of people to really keep on top, of all the discussions that are going on so that you can be sort of well informed. Decide who's going to collect what information, and where you're getting it from, gather the information, analyze the findings, have a sort of group um, get together, brainstorm all your issues, get your findings down, use your template to put them into the different areas, and then brainstorm what are we going to do about it. Look at what's the most important, the same. Um, and then identify what options we're going to do. Write a discussion group for all the other stakeholders, so it might have to go wider than just your team or your department, and then circulate it. So, or you might say, well, this is a small team one, so we're going to take these actions, but I would circulate that round for consultation to senior management as well to make sure they can sign it off. Some tips. Make sure you do collaborate. The more different perspectives, the more different ideas you get. Makes sense, really. So if there is any other expertise within the organisations, you might bring them in for advice, especially the finance team or the legal team, because they might think of things that you won't have even thought of. Use the pestle analysis with other techniques. Usually SWOT and pestle get done together. Especially for like annual reports and things like that, or a major change. And sometimes we'll look at sort of things like Porter's 5 forces, and then some competitor analysis where you're actually analysing the strengths and weaknesses of your competitors as well. Or something like scenario planning where you do a what if this legislation comes in, um, what would we have to change? And you can actually do that, and that's a great thing to brainstorm in team meetings as well. You can read about competitor analysis and scenario planning, and I want you, as part of your guided study, to look at Porter's 5 forces. So you should incorporate the pestle analysis, as I said, into an ongoing process, which is really part of the change management process. Don't collect huge amounts of information without actually doing anything with it, because it becomes frustrating in the end. So collect a certain amount and then maybe meet together and talk about it. Are we going to use this information? Are we going to not go further with that information and maybe do a little bit more with this? Before you don't just jump to conclusions based on what happened in the past, because there's always something different coming around the corner. So you need to base it on data and proper discussion, really. So it'd be very easy to meet and go, well, I know what's going to happen because 5 years ago something like this happened and it went like this. Well, it might not happen the same way. What is it used for? Very similar to SWOT, strategic business planning. It gives you some growth targets and you can maybe identify some risks as well, help you to consider new product development. Looks at skills gaps within your staffing teams, any new jobs that need development, any job reductions that need to happen because maybe that role's not needed anymore. It helps with your planning, your marketing. You've got an idea of what's going on out there, really, and then what sort of type of marketing. Who are you? Who are your customer base, and have they changed? Have they changed their ideas and their needs over the years? Helps with product development. It knows when you want to maybe get rid of a product, or maybe look at a new one, or maybe do something different with a product. It helps with organizational change in general, usually at the top level, and especially when you do it with a SWOT analysis, because senior management team can really look at where there are shortages, where there are issues with the workforce, where they need to go in different directions, where they need to expand, where they need to close down, as I've said. So it's quite good for strategizing what you do with your future as well. Um, and it just gives you a space free from your day-to-day work where you can actually sit down and look at some of these future issues, because we often read about them in articles and think, oh gosh, I wonder how that will affect me. And then you carry on and you sort of forget about it and something else comes up. So it's really about sitting down and going, yeah, let's have a look at how that change in legislation is going to affect the way our business works. What are the advantages of it? Like SWOT, it's pretty simple, but it does give you an understanding of the wider business environment, particularly good for teams where some people just sort of think about the job that they do. It encourages you to think, as I said, outside the box, outside the building, so you can think a bit more strategically. It gives you some space to anticipate future business threats, and hopefully it gives you a bit of time to at least plan some action. And it can also enable you to spot business opportunities that might be coming up over the next couple of years, so that you can have a plan to respond well to them. Some disadvantages: some people, when they do it, they oversimplify the amount of data. Now, I did say to you, don't have too much data, but on the other hand, don't not have enough that you can't make a decision with it. There is a risk of, as I said, about doing too much data. You've got to find that happy medium, really, enough for you to work with, but not so much you just drown in it. Don't put your data on assumptions. Really, they need to be as hard facts as you can. Um, some environments can change very, very fast. It makes it very difficult to anticipate, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't try, really. That's not a really good enough excuse, because if people go, oh, the environment's changing so fast, I just can't keep up, so I won't. Well, that's a good way to say goodbye to a business. As is SWOT, to be effective, you need to repeat it, because you need to see if you've actually changed or if anything good's come out of it, really. That's the same with most business planning processes. Okay, I've got two pieces of guided study for you to work on before you go move on to next week's work. Okay. Um, so do some research online and complete a SWOT analysis of McDonald's. Now, you can find tons and tons of research. There's actually quite a lot of SWOT analysis of McDonald's around as well. But I'd like you to try and, because this is for your benefit, have a go at doing your own SWOT. Jot it all down. You can use a template if you want. I'm going to put up an answer sheet later on. I'm going to give you some time to do it, and I'll put it up maybe in a couple of weeks or so. So you can reflect on it. You can open it up and have a look and see if you've come up with the same ideas. See if I've got anything that you haven't thought of, just to give you an idea of how to do it, just to make you confident that you're doing the right sort of thing. Obviously, if you're unsure of anything, please contact me, and I'll give you some guidance. But really, you'll find so much information, and with McDonald's there's a lot, so you'll find enough to do a decent SWOT analysis anyway. Another bit of guided study I'd like you to do, as I said, before you move on to the next week. Use some of the resources I've provided you. You'll see a couple of handouts available. And some of your own additional research. So don't just rely on mine. You need to do some work of your own. I want you to actually make some notes on Porter's 5 forces, so that you know the same amount you do about SWOT and PESTLE, you know about 5 forces. So think about, what is it? What are the different elements of it? What do you use it for? And how do you do it? And what you're hoping to get out of it. What's the outcome of it, really? It's another planning tool, so a lot of it will be similar, apart from the fact it's got 5 forces and there's 5 different elements. Okay, and I also want you to do a little bit of reading on risk management in business. Now, when you look at risk management, you also get health and safety risk management, like, managing the environment and making sure that there's nothing dangerous on the floor or electricals or so. I don't want you to be looking at that. You may well do that in some other unit, but not in this one. Okay. This is about business risk management. I have done a handout for you, a poster that you can have a look at, and then maybe do a bit of wider reading as well. You should find plenty, really. Okay, so that's it for week 2. So please do your guided study before you move on. Okay, that's really important. Make any notes that you need, and then you'll be ready for week 3. We'll be looking at structures, processes, and resources. Okay. Okay, well, I'll see you then. Thank you. Bye.